Alrighty. In September 1826, a man by the name of William Morgan was going around western New York. It's right in my face here. William Morgan was going around to pub after pub, warning the people about a couple of books that he was prepaid to write. And the two books involved the white Indians that Lewis and Clark encountered on their expedition, and the other was the threat to destroy the United States of America with an infiltration into the Scottish Rites Freemasonry in the United States. He being a part of the Grand Lodge Freemasonry. The Smith family found out about this, and when William Morgan got arrested on bogus charges, to have him locked up so that he could not work on the publication of those books, his publication company, owner bailed him out of jail, and the Freemasonic Lodge that Joseph Smith Sr. belonged to assisted him in getting him out of the United States so that he can escape. As a result of William Morgan's disappearance and suspected murder, because there were a couple of instances where people thought they may have found his body, the inhabitants of the colonies were outraged when the press went and printed the story. So that in 1827, mobs formed across the colonies, and Freemasonic temples, both of Scottish Rites lodges and Grand Lodge temples, were burned to the ground with this anti-Masonic movement. There are more details, but the Smith family then produced the Book of Mormon, which was a book talking about white American Indians and a threat to the United States. Joseph Smith was murdered, and the church that Joseph Smith had organized, because he couldn't build a temple with a Freemasonic overtone, the colonies would not allow it. Other Freemasonic movements had to change the name to cultural halls. People with the name of Hiram had to respell their name from their birth certificate so that others would not identify them with Freemasons. Hiram Smith being a Freemason as well. And with Joseph Smith's death came a succession crisis. Nobody knew what to do, and Brigham Young ignored Doctrine and Covenants, section 107, verse 22, and went to 24, I believe. The part where it says that the traveling 12 is equal in authority to the first presidency, rather than when the first presidency is no longer in operation, the whole Melchizedek priesthood are to choose the successor of the church. He sort of left that part out, and as a result, many Mormons died because he didn't have them go with him during the summertime, and instead they weren't able to leave until the winter time, and thus they died. And so I've talked all about Brigham Young. There's more to say, but then we get to President Benson, Ezra Taft Benson, who was also Secretary of Agriculture for the United States government, who had been the one who warned members of the church that the United States government would fall and that it would not be saved in Washington. But President Benson also put out the first presidency message about the King James Version of the Bible. And in that document, he says that the original manuscripts, documents for the Bible are gone. They don't exist. And so therefore, the church is not going to try to correct the translation of the Bible, and therefore use the current King James Version that they use, even though it does not contain the Apocrypha, of which Joseph Smith said was perfectly fine, and in section 91 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Doesn't exist in our scriptures, does it, Mormons? And interestingly, on the 27th of November, 1967, the church obtained the Joseph Smith Papyri from the New York Museum, which they had thought was burned in the Chicago fire. So now the church had possession of original documents of the Bible. Yet Benson still came out in 1992, 25 years later, to say there are no original documents of the Bible. It's obvious that Benson did not have the key of the priesthood pertaining to translation. For if he did, he would have known that he had in possession 25 years ago that the original Bible manuscripts had been found, and that a translation could be made to correct the Bible, as Ezekiel 37 prophesied would happen one day. The stick of Judah is the Torah. And the stick of Joseph was to be able to merge as one book, meaning it cannot be the Book of Mormon, because you can't merge the Book of Mormon with the Torah. There's no Torah stories in the Book of Mormon. There's a few references, Adam fell, not Eve, Adam fell, so we get clues of some of the changes that the book of Joseph would have on the book of Judah, so that the book of Joseph will correct and fill in the gaps of the book of Judah. And the church had these documents in their possession. Yet Brigham Young, President Benson did not even know that that's what he had. And so he made the huge error exposing that he and none of the prophets have the key of the priesthood pertaining to translation. When you take over the church of God, and you don't have authority, you don't automatically get the keys of the priesthood. You don't get the keys of the priesthood. Remember section 121 of the Doctrine and Covenants, and you all know it, Mormons. Many are called, but few are frozen. Chosen. And why are they not chosen? And lists out some stuff. Cover up is one of them. The church has been covering up church history. We know this because the church has confessed that they've been covering up church history. The gospel topic essays are their confession that they had been covering up church history. But then they go and lie about what they think the truth is, what they want us to believe the truth is. And translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham, they declare that Joseph Smith did not translate the Book of Abraham. They're claiming Joseph Smith did not have the key of the priesthood of translation. Now, it should have been Elijah who gave him the key of the priesthood of translation, because it was Elijah who gave him the key of seer, having to do with the temple. However, Joseph was claiming to be able to translate way back when Nephi, he claims, gave him the Book of Mormon plates. Yes, Nephi. It was changed after his death to Moroni. And so apparently Nephi was therefore the one who had the key of translation of the priesthood. But that's not talked about in the church, is it? Nevertheless, and notwithstanding, and so we come to today. We have a President of the United States whose campaign platform as he ran for president was to destroy the United States of America, as Joseph Smith warned through the Book of Mormon, as William Morgan warned those in Western New York and had to be secreted out of the country to protect his life. Our president has shut down the government for 35 days. And he is about to do it again. He has no intention of building a wall. He just wants to cover up his conspiracy against the United States so that he doesn't go to prison. The Constitution of the United States of America has been hanging by a thread because of the changes that were made by our government to allow a man like Trump into office as the president. It is FBI policy, which policy violates the Declaration of Independence, which violates the Constitution, because they won't go after a sitting president. When he gets up at the State of the Union and openly threatens the House of Representatives to back off on all the investigations into his corruption, with the threat of no legislation. In the Book of Mormon, it is told by the character King Mosiah that you cannot remove an iniquitous king without much bloodshed. Our nation has designed it to suppress civil rights movements. They learned their lesson from the 60s. It is now a crime to protest the government. And the National Guard is immediately brought in to suppress any riots when people are struggling for survival. This is the threat to the United States that was warned about. And it was Joseph Smith's intention to build up an army to go up against the government of the United States that would be infiltrated to destroy the United States of America, so that the Constitution would be restored, that the government, a constitutional republic, not a democracy, not a socialist republic, not a representative republic, but a constitutional republic would be restored to the people. That is the army of Israel. But Joseph Smith was murdered. And now, when the nation is in jeopardy, overrun by a king, there is no army of Israel to go up against the government. We are all in bondage. We are all slaves to the government and to the economy, just like the house of Israel was in the land of Egypt, according to the biblical text. So the church leaders, they're not doing anything to stand up against the corruption of the United States. They don't have the keys of the priesthood. They're not receiving revelation from God. They are in on the threat to the United States. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints aided and abetted with Nazi Germany. If you want more information on that, there's Mormonism and the swastika. I think that's the title of the YouTube video, and also that's the title of the book. We are in perilous times right now. We are following the pattern that led to World War II. But it's worse because Hitler did not pollute the air, the water, or the land. He tried to build a utopia. But his problem was that he purged the people by murdering millions who were Jews and Catholics and Christians. The only religion that Hitler did not go after in his purge were the Mormons. And so now we're here in this day and age where Mormons are in positions of power, placing people in positions of power to protect Trump. Just as the Book of Mormon warned about an iniquitous king who protects himself on the throne, whose friends protect him on the throne, who has friends put in to protect him on the throne. This is the worst case scenario, my fellow Mormons. You have been lied and deceived. Section 43 of the Doctrine and Covenants was a direct warning not to trust anyone who is not the legitimate leader of the church. Brigham Young was not the legitimate leader, and therefore he deceived those who survived by making it to the kingdom of Deseret. He had no authority, and so Mormons who were following him were deceived. The Mormons forgot the covenants of the Doctrine and Covenants, forgot the revelations of the Book of Mormon, and have been under condemnation for not adhering to the warning in the Book of Mormon. It's not a historical document. It was specifically written as a warning, so that it could be used to gather in those who would go up against the United States when the United States would hang by a thread, when the federal government would be non-existent, when states would run themselves. Because when the government will shut down, and it's unclear as to whether Trump's going to wait until the 15th. If his son, Donald Jr., is to be arrested for having lied to Congress in his hearing testimony, which Cohen and Stone have been arrested for lying to Congress. And so 73 other transcripts of hearing testimonies to Congress have been submitted to Robert Mueller. We're definitely going to be seeing a number of arrests fairly soon. Will Trump stand up and defend his son? Because everybody knows Ivanka is his favorite. But Ivanka is in trouble too. So we're in for some perilous times ahead. With this next shutdown, the United States will suffer. You already saw a taste of it with the 35-day shutdown. This next one will be indefinite. Everything in our lives will be disturbed. And there will be a purging. The poor, the disabled, the elderly, the orphaned, the single parent will all suffer. Businesses will collapse. And so others will also fall. The church won't help. They didn't help the last time. And now we have a militant organization from within Mormonism calling themselves on Twitter DesNat, Deseret Nation, whose specific intention is to purge the church of apostates. They can't just accept that people don't want to belong to the church. They will refuse to do church history research, to learn, as I have, that the church does not have keys of the priesthood, especially of translation. There's more to the story, and I am unable to cover it here. We're already at 30 minutes. But just so that you know, the church is false. It cannot save any of you after we die, because they have no keys of the priesthood. They have temples, but no priesthood. No authority from God to make anything binding in the church. This is a time of doom. This is a time to fear. This is a time of wrath. This is the time of destruction. The signs in the heavens have all occurred to warn you, but you guys did not see it. You did not believe it. What did you think the total solar eclipse was all about? What did you think the lunar eclipses were about? Did you know that Thomas S. Monson died during a sign from John the Revelator? Chapter 12. So, you guys have been warned, but you allowed yourselves to be deceived with the alterations of doctrine. You believe that instead of faith without works is dead, you now believe that faith alone giveth life. That's Christian doctrine that you allowed to infiltrate the church and take over the original doctrines of the Book of Mormon. And you twist the scriptures, Moroni chapter 3 or 10 verses 3 through 5. You remove words in order to conform this infiltrated doctrine into the church. Manifest the truth? Yeah, you don't include manifest in that passage, do you? By the power of the Holy Ghost? You leave that word out too. And you completely drop out Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28. Faith is in the Word. The Word is compared to a seed. Every farmer knows that if you just hold on to a seed, it's worthless. It will not give life in and of itself. The only way a seed will give mankind life is by planting it in the ground and making sure it grows so that at harvest time you can obtain the fruit of that seed. The manifestation in the flesh. The Word made flesh. That's a scientific process, in case anybody didn't know. Scientists don't just have faith and come up with all sorts of things like the Big Bang and evolutionary theory, which they do. But they're able to identify the law of gravity, starting with a hypothesis, identifying a theory, and confirming that theory with testing, such that a mathematical formula establishes it as law. So scientists will never admit to needing faith in the beginning when they come up with a hypothesis. Their focus is on the end results, the truth. Because to a scientist, they know that faith alone is nothing. It's worthless. It does not establish truth. Okay. So this morning I have a number of videos that I'm going to keep hammering on you guys. And I don't know what line it is that you have that when the church crosses, or when you recognize that the church has already crossed, that you will finally up and leave. I don't know what it's going to take for you to recognize that and say, enough is enough, I'm out of here. 13 million members of the church have already left. It's the remaining 3 million that I'm trying to get to save you, to rescue you out of the church. And so what is it, Mormons? What will convince you to stop attacking me and say, he's right, the church is false? There is no authority. They've had the original Bible documents in their possession, and the church is claiming instead that they don't exist, that they're not what they are. Truth isn't true, reality isn't real, as they claim. Sound familiar? Alrighty, so here we go with another day.